So you just bought a Domino XL, the DF700. How the heck do you get started? Let me show you. I'm going to go through the tool and show you some technique on how to use. Oh, pay attention. Your Domino XL comes with installed a 12mm bit. Available are the 8s, 10s, and 14s. Let's go ahead and change a bit. So to change the bit, you need that 12mm wrench. It comes with the XL. Don't lose it. I think the value is about $300. All right, so there's a green tab right here, and what you do first is you take that 12mm wrench and you pop it, and it comes right off. Now there's also another green tab here. This is an arbor lock, and there's flats on the bit. So what you do is you press the tab down, and on those flats, you can spin that off. What happens is there's a hole in the arbor shaft that green tab pushes a pin into, so you can change it. Now I'm going to put an 8mm bit on there. And you can tell on the side the size of them because they're scribed right there. Now, here is a major tip for you. When you are tightening this, you just snug it. You don't over torque it. It will stay right there because of the rotation of the bit. Okay, so there's two levers on here. One of them is to take the plate and make sure it's at the right angle, whether 90, 45, or 67.5. And the other one is right here. I'm going to set this at 90, right? And just lock it down with this lever. This one is for the plate height. Now, as I lock it in, you see how it's going to aim forward? That may get in the way. The nice thing about the XL is these are spring loaded, so you can take it, and what that does, that moves it off the flat spots, and I can get it right out of the way. So one of the things I like to define when I'm showing people how to use a domino is this part here that has the arc that we moved down to 90 degrees. That's called the plate. That's where you rest the domino on top of your material. But there's another reference point. It's this square part right here. That's the base. So let's talk about where to position the domino in our joinery. We have right here the plate that we need to adjust. In here we have a gauge block. And when I put 30 in here, that's a direct reading from here to the center of the domino. There's also a scale that shows that right here. The reason I like to use the gauge block, it's a great reference in the future. In case I make a mistake, I can go right back to it, and instead of using my eye, I can put it right on the gauge block and lock it in. Now let's talk about that a little bit further. This here, or this piece I want to put into this for an example, this 4x4. And this piece here reads or measures out in thickness 64mm. Now I set this at 30. For my joinery, it doesn't matter if it's exactly in the center. But if for you it matters, I can unlock this, not use the gauge block, get it out of the way, and set that scale exactly for half of 64, which is 32. Hopefully that explains it for you. So we talked about putting from the face of the board, which we have marked, okay, to roughly the center. We're going to put it at 30mm, okay, from the top of the plate. Now let's talk about how we're going to position this. And we have a little bit of leeway, but what I did is I marked a center line on this walnut. On the machine, if you want to reference the machine and not your eyes, you have these pins. You have them at 20, 37, and 50 from the center, which you'll see here on the cursor, and the top of this triangle right here. Now, we're going to use the 37mm. It's roughly the center. That is because this is 64mm wide. So what I'm going to do is I don't need all these pins. I'm just going to push those back, the 20 and the 50. Now, what that does is that references from the side of the machine when we shoulder that pin on the side of the board. But to reset it, it's those pins. It's a push of this button right here and it resets all the pins. Okay, before I make this plunge, the setup for safety is very important. I have a low profile stop that my board is against. I've also locked it down to the table because this is a narrow stock and I don't want it moving on me. But you're also going to notice when I come over here, there's 3 or 4 things that I look at. I'm working off the face for the reference mark, okay? Work off the right face with your plate. Number 2, you're going to see I'm going to plunge at a steady rate. Number 3, you're going to see that I'm plunging from the back of the machine. I don't want to wobble it. And that's nice thing about that is if you look at the handle on the XL, it holds it a little bit better to the material. And the 4th is I'm working above the plane of the table. You can see the base here, it's not sitting on the table, it's actually off the table. That way there, I'm not using the base as a reference, but I'm using the plate. Duh! One more setting on the domino before I make the plunge. I have to figure out the plunge depth, and that's pretty easy. This is a 12 by 100, 12 being the thickness, 100 being the length. So I got to set the plunge depth. Now I could split it and go 50-50, but in this joinery, I'm taking, if you remember, I'm taking this walnut and putting it right here into this 4x4 of Doug fir. Now, my joinery, and if I can swing this around here, if I went 50 and 50, and then I had another 50 coming in this way, okay, as I do this table, guess what? When you put it, assemble it together, you put it together and it's in glue up, this is going to push out too far. It's not going to seat all the way. So I want to do an offset tenon or plunge, mortise. So if we could come in here a little bit, and if I take this and I set it at 50, I'm reading the cursor, but that's not what I want. I want one to be 70 and one to be 30. So I'm going to go 70 into the walnut, and I mark it, always mark it so you don't forget. And then to go into the fir, I marked it at 30. So when I take this and I set it at 30, these 2 points of reference are actually stops. And that helps me remember as I go through the process of joinery, the settings I have. So I have one set at 70 and I have one at 30. You have less tendency to forget with these reference stops. I hope this made sense because many times I've been a little bit confused, but these stops have helped me. All right, this is going to be a fun experiment so you can see something. I have my X here and my X here. That is where I'm going to reference the pins because this is going in between 2 4x4s. And I'm going to go normal speed and pull it out, okay? And then on this one, I'm going to go in, stop for about 2 seconds, and then plunge out. Let's see what the results are. All right, one more thing to remember before I make the plunge. I almost forgot. I am going to do these in the tight setting. There are 2 settings to set this at. One in the tight, so there's no lateral tolerance. And then the second setting gives you a little bit of lateral tolerance. This way you still have your shear strength and glue line this way, but that is to help an assembly. I'm going to do them all in tight because I'm using the reference points and the precision of the machine. To switch between the settings, it's this green lever right here, and I just switch it. It doesn't have to be running. You can do it while it's in off. You always have dust extraction hooked up to your domino because that pulls the chip out of the mortise. It also prolongs the life of the cut ahead. But I did this one, pushed it in at a steady rate and withdrew it quickly. Look at the dust that was still in here. You always have to empty out the dust. Now, the one I plunged in and held it for about 2 seconds, you're gonna notice a significant difference. But always empty out your mortises. So here's an added bonus. This is why I like using the gauge block. What if this is an apron skirt and this is my table leg? I want a 10 millimeter offset. It's a reveal. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna scribe that. And then what I'll do is I'll release this. And remember how we had this set at 30? That brings us down. On this leg, apron skirt, I'm gonna take this and set it at 40. And that way there, that'll drop it and I'll get that 10 millimeter reveal. And I wanna make sure you understand, I have a 37 millimeter pin that I'm using and a 37 millimeter. So don't forget, the plate height was 30 in the gauge block window, and when we did the leg, the plate height was 40. So that gives us the perfect 10 millimeter offset. Let's check it out. I got that 12 by 100. I'll put it in the mortise. That's my reference point right there. We'll put it in, and let's check. Oh my God, it's perfect here. Let's check that offset to see if that's exactly 10 millimeters, and it is spot on. So here's an application that I've seen people struggle with over the years with the XL, and it doesn't have to be. I need to place this 12 by 100 in this miter of these 4x4s. So I want to place it right about here. What I like to do is make a mark at the center line right here. So I mentioned earlier that is the center line of my domino. And what I've seen people struggle with, I'm going to set this at 45 because these 4x4s are cut at 45. I need to line up that center line here with that mark I made there. Well, I've seen people struggle because they go like this with the domino and they balance the whole thing. You don't have to. Take the fence off, and then it makes lining it up effortless, just like this. So we just used the center pin, but there's also, remember, there's a 20 millimeter and a 50 millimeter pin. But what if you need them further apart? There's an accessory called a cross stop. We've done a standalone video. I'll have it referenced in the description below. But these are the same ones that work with the DF 500, the regular domino. If we can come in here and we can see this, this says DF 500, and the distance on the 500 on the base to the center is 10 millimeters. But remember what I mentioned on this, this is 15 millimeters. So you have to adjust these to work with the XL. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna twist this knob, and what happens is this rotates. So remember, whatever machine you're using, the number has to reference here. So when I put it on, when you put these on any of the machines, make sure the machine is flat. There's little dovetails right here in the machine, and it just, when you lock it back, it locks it in. Still paying attention? So hopefully this gives you a quick start kick to get going with your Domino XL. I always tell everybody, when you get a new tool, get some scrap, practice with it so you understand it before you go to the really good material. And as we always say, in the SedgeTool shop, be positive, stay sharp, and we mean wicked sharp.